All right. Hare Krishna. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunjabi Hari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunjabi Hari. Gopi Janavallabha Girivaradhari. Jai Gopi Janavallabha Girivaradhari. Yashodanandana Bhajana Ranjana. Yashodanandana Bhajana Ranjana. Yamunatira Vanachari. Yamunatira Vanachari. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunjabi Hari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunjabi Hari. Jai Mr. Pad Paramahamsa Parivajacharya Ashtotar the Srimad, His Divine Grace Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada Ki Jai. ISKCON BBT Founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahamsa Parivajacharya Ashtotar the Srimad, His Divine Grace Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur Ki Jai. Ananta Koti Vaishnava Ki Jai. Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai. Srimad Bhagavad Gita Ki Jai. Samaveda Bhaktivinoda Ki Jai. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glory to Sri Guru and Gauranga. Okay. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. On this 28th day of March, 2022 in San Diego, we're reading from Srimad Bhagavad Gita as it is, translation and commentary by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. And we are in chapter 2, entitled Contents of the Gita Summarized. Text number 64 at the bottom of page 130. Raga. No? 64, yeah. Raga, dvesa, vimukhtaistu, vishayan, indriyaischaran, atmavasyaya, vidhe atma, Pasadam Adhigacchati Raga dvesa vimuktaistu Vishayan indriyaischcharan Atmavasya vidheyatma Prasadam Hadhigacchati Ragadvesha 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 vimuktaistu Vishayan indriyaischcharan Atmavasya vidheyatma Prasadam Hadhigacchati. Anyone in Zoom land? Guess not. Raga, attachment, dvesha, and detachment, vimuktai, by one who has become free from, two, but, vishayan, sense objects, indriyai, by the senses, charan, acting upon, atmavashyai, under one's control, vidhe atma, one who follows regulated freedom. Prasadam, the mercy of the Lord, adhigacchati, attains. Translation. But a person free from all attachment and aversion, and able to control his senses through regulative principles of freedom, can obtain the complete mercy of the Lord. So in this purport, you say aversion is the word, and probably use detachment as a synonym, but it's not exact. So I'm going to read aversion. Purport. It is already explained that one may externally control the senses by some artificial process. But unless the senses are engaged in the transcendental service of the Lord, there is every chance of a fall. Although the person in full Krishna consciousness may apparently be on the sensual plane, because of his being Krishna conscious, he has no attachment to sensual activities. The Krishna conscious person is concerned only with the satisfaction of Krishna and nothing else. Therefore, he is transcendental to all attachment and aversion. If Krishna wants, the devotee can do anything which is ordinarily undesirable, and if Krishna does not want, he shall not do that which he would have ordinarily done for his own satisfaction. Therefore, to act or not to act is within his control, because he acts only under the direction of Krishna. This consciousness is the causeless mercy of the Lord, which the devotee can achieve in spite of his being attached to the sensual platform. Om jnana timarandasya jnananjana shalakaya chakshu unmilitan mena tasmai shri gurave namaha. I was born in the darkest of ignorance, but my spiritual master Srila Prabhupada opened my eyes with the torchlight of knowledge. I offer my humble obeisance unto him and to all members of Shri Parampara, the disciplic succession. So this is a very important verse, and just to review, starting in text 55, Krishna was describing the devotee who's in samadhi, who's at a very high platform, the Uttama Bhakta actually. And how does it start off? Prajahati yada kaman sarvan parta manogatan. This is the first stage. In other words, the eternal enemy of the living entity in the conditioned state is lust, material desire. Krishna explains that at the end of the next chapter. So the pure devotee, he gives up. Prajahati means to throw far away. The jahati means to give up. Prajahati, the prefix pra intensifies anything. And so it gives it up completely. He's giving up these desires that arise out of the mind, that are generated in the mind, and satisfied with the Atman. Atman eva atmana tushta. Now the Atman refers to the soul as well as the super soul. So the devotee is satisfied when his soul is connected to the super soul, to Krishna, in yoga. So it's both selves. It finds satisfaction in the self alone by being connected to Krishna. Stita pragyas to those. So he's said to be fixed. And he goes on in this theme. Now, dukesh anudvignamana, here's where the aversion comes in. Dukkha is misery. So if one is not disturbed, the mind is not disturbed when difficult things happen or negative things happen, this is a sign of being fixed on the plane of Krishna consciousness. And we have some great examples, Prahlad Maharaj, Haridas Thakur in our literatures. Srila Prabhupada as well, all of them. And Sukeshu Vigataspahad, the other side of the coin. One is the allurements to enjoy in this material world, and one is the horrible things coming at you that are disturbing your mind. So if you can avoid the allurements and you can be fixed in serving the lotus feet of Krishna at every moment and therefore taking shelter, then you can also be undisturbed by the miseries, the external miseries, the sensual miseries, because you're always connected to Krishna and you're always enjoying the bhakti rasa. Vita raga bhaya krodha. So this raga, this is called, Vita raga means vairagya. You've heard of vairagya. Vairagya is detachment. We want that detachment. Aversion is something else. Being the mind disturbed by the unpleasant things, then you're not free of aversion. You have all kinds of things that you're averse to. But that's part of the duality. There's the attraction to the sense gratification and the aversion from things which stop your sense gratification or cause you pain. So the pure devotee is on a platform beyond both of those. And is therefore stita di manurachate. No raga, therefore no bhaya, no krodha. Then it goes on. It doesn't have any affection or attachment to things. Yat sarvatra anabhisneha. And if you get shubha and ashubha, it's opposite, good and evil. So these things come at you automatically by being in the material world. But if one doesn't praise the good things and doesn't, think, oh, now I'm so fortunate, just to realize this is material. Don't lose your equilibrium. And not dveshti. This is the doesn't abhor or is not averse to that which is ashubham, which is evil or which is painful. So basically is in this equipoise state. Then it compares to the tortoise. Remember the famous turtle who can pull his senses in when there's some danger. He pulls his head even in and everything, and so he's in the shell. So when we can withdraw the senses, when they're not needed for devotional service, we're not attracted to use them for sense gratification. That's a sign of being fixed. And then there's 59, here's a key verse. Vishayabhani vartantena daharasya dehinak. Without being Krishna conscious, one may still want to withdraw from certain things that you're addicted to that are causing you, ruining your life, alcohol, drugs, whatever it is, people, some relationship. So you give it up on the strength of your will, but the desire is still in your heart. And you can fall off the wagon, Oh, I've been sober for 6 months, I can go in and visit my friend in the bar, maybe have one drink. Right? Fall off the wagon. So that's what the desire still remains. But giving these things up by experiencing param drishta, means directly perceiving the Lord, one remains fixed. The very desire for the lower things is burned up. You see? That's real vairagya. So this is all signs. And then Krishna gives a warning, yatato yopikonde, you may be striving, an intelligent person, but the senses are so strong and impetuous, Arjuna, that they may forcibly carry the mind even a person of discrimination who's endeavoring to control them. So it's not just a question of mental fortitude or willpower. You have to practice devotional service and link up to Krishna and open up the channel to that higher taste, to the pleasure of Krishna consciousness, and then you can be firmly fixed in vairagya. And that's the whole idea. Indriyani pramati indi haranti pasabangna. So what's the solution? 61, the key verse. I mentioned this is the first time in the Gita where Krishna talks about matpada. That is me who you have to fix your mind on. Otherwise he's talking about the self and everything before. Tani sarvani sangyamya, so controlling the senses. And yukta asita matpaha, this is how the realized soul sits. You remember this one? How does he sit? How does he walk? Asita, he's sitting matpada, his consciousness is fixed on me. Then he can control the senses, and his pragya is pratishtita, his intelligence is fixed. And then we get these two verses describing how one falls down into the material pool. You remember, now he's back to describing the conditioned soul. By contemplating the objects of the senses, one actually becomes attached to them. And if you keep contemplating, then you'll get kama. That attachment will grow into kama, which is a very strong desire to enjoy. And when those material desires are inevitably frustrated somewhere along the way, the kama burns like fire, never satisfied, so it must be frustrated, then you become angry, krodha. And that krodha, bhavati sammoha, you can completely bewilder your mind. Prabhupada tells on a tape how one brother killed the other brother out of fury. Maybe he stole his girlfriend or whatever. He murdered him. And then, forever after, he was sorry, but it was too late. He was convicted, he was sentenced to die. The father appealed, I lost one son, please don't take my other son, so he got a life sentence. So krodha, you become completely bewildered by anger, fury. And then you forget everything, smriti vibraha. You forget yourself, relationships, and everything. And when the memory is lost, then the intelligence becomes destroyed, and you're finished down in the material pool. So what's the solution? The verse we read today. So raga dvesa vimukta is 2. The key element here is vidhe atma. By practicing through regulative principles of freedom. This is the key. Not only the 4 regs, which are part of it, but all the rules and regulations of bhakti. It's interesting because rules and regulations means you're restricted, right? But here it says the regulations of freedom. You follow these restraints and these controls and things, which is a little austere at first, but it frees you from what? From all the myriad attachments of this world that are binding us. These are called hridaya granthi, the knots in the heart. So these regulative principles of freedom, which you can say that's all the do's and don'ts, proscriptions and prescriptions of bhakti, one can become free from all attachment and aversion and become fixed in equipoise because of Krishna consciousness and obtain the complete mercy of the Lord. Prasadam adhigacchati. So this prasadam has different meanings here. And this one, of course, is the mercy of the Lord. And of course, that's a word for the food mercy is also there. So that's, all of this is very, very important. He's going to show how this prasadam, this prasade, will actually bring one peace also. This inner peace that we're hankering for. So that's the significance of this verse. I always, I remember reading this verse, and this is the solution to the previous 2 verses, where if you're just a materialist, you have to be attached. You have to be attached to things, and that turns into a strong desire, and you're off and running in your conditioned soul. But accepting the regular principles of freedom, of bhakti, one can come to the point of equipoise and advancement and get the mercy of Krishna and go on in devotional service. Any questions on this verse, particular verse? Comments? Anyone in Zoom land? No one's out there. Okay. All right, let's go on. What is this prasadam? Text 65. Prasade sarvadukkanam hanirasyo pajayate prasanna chetaso yashu buddhi parhivatishyate. For one thus satisfied in Krishna consciousness, the threefold miseries of material existence exist no longer. In such satisfied consciousness, one's intelligence is soon well established. So don't forget, it's part of the theme here is buddhi yoga, which we're talking about. So let's get back to the buddhi. All right, no purport, we'll go on. Nasti buddhiri yuktasya nacha yuktasya bhavana nacha bhavyata kshantir ashantasya kutak sukham. One who is not connected with the Supreme in Krishna consciousness can have neither transcendental intelligence nor a steady mind, without which there is no possibility of peace. And how can there be any happiness without peace. Purport. Unless one is in Krishna consciousness, there is no possibility of peace. So it is confirmed in the 5th chapter, 529, that when one understands that Krishna is the only enjoyer of all the good results of sacrifice and penance, that he is the proprietor of all universal manifestations, and that he is the real friend of all living entities, then only can one have real peace. Therefore, if one is not in Krishna consciousness, there cannot be a final goal for the mind. Disturbance is due to want of an ultimate goal. And when one is certain that Krishna is the enjoyer, proprietor, and friend of everyone and everything, then one can, with a steady mind, bring about peace. Therefore, one who is engaged without a relationship with Krishna is certainly always in distress and is without peace, however much he may make a show of peace and spiritual advancement in life. Krishna consciousness is a self-manifested, peaceful condition which can be achieved only in relationship with Krishna. So there's a famous verse that Lord Chaitanya taught to Sanatana Goswami, I believe, in the Madhya Lila. It says, Krishna Bhakta Nishkama Ata Eva Shanta Bhukti Mukti Siddhi Kami Sakali Ashanta. So these are like 4 different categories of human beings, and they're like universal. So the first line says, Krishna Bhakta Nishkama Ata Eva Shanta, because the Bhakta, the devotee of Krishna, is without any material desires, Nishkama, therefore he's peaceful. The same theme is in the Bhagavad Gita here. Then he gives 3 other types of persons, categories. Bhukti Mukti Siddhi Kami, Sakali Ashanta, or just the opposite, not peaceful. So what are these categories? The first is practically everybody. Bhukti Kami, Haribol Sol, welcome. Bhukti Kami means those who are desirous of unlimited varieties of sense gratification. Now, referencing text 529, which Srila Prabhupada cites here in the purport, we're on page 132. Bhoktaram Yagyatapasam, right? Bhoktaram, bhukti is the same word. So Bhoktaram is the enjoyer. Krishna is the ultimate enjoyer of all sacrifice and austerity. This is the peace formula. Prabhupada dubbed this the peace formula, the final verse of text chapter 5 in the Gita. Bhoktaram Yagyatapasam Sarvaloka Maheshwaram Sudidam Sarvabhutanam Gyatva Mam Shantim Richati. One who knows this, not just knows it theoretically, but actually understands it and lives according to this reality. That Krishna is meant to be the enjoyer of all sacrifices and penances. In other words, he's the real Purusha. And Purusha means the supreme enjoyer. And all others are meant to serve him. Even in the CC, it describes how the other incarnations of God want to serve him. Even Krishna wants to serve him. That's why he comes as Lord Chaitanya. There's so much pleasure in serving Krishna in pure love. Krishna's saying, my Radharani is enjoying even more than me by serving me. So I want to be in her position. So you'll find that an Advaitacharya, he's also an incarnation of Vishnu. He's God. He wants to serve Lord Chaitanya. What to speak of Nityananda? He's also Balaram. So that's the standard of pleasure, that Krishna is the supreme enjoyer, but everyone else also becomes an enjoyer when they serve him. So, Sarvaloka Maheshwaram, Krishna is the supreme controller of all planets and all universes and everything else. And then, it's very interesting, and he is the most intimate, well-wishing friend of every living entity. So you have these 2 like glories, you know, the controller of everything, the enjoyer of everything. Boy, how can I ever possibly know such a person? But he's in the heart of everyone as our well-wishing friend, trying to give us good guidance, which we keep refusing in the conditioned state. So he comes externally as the spiritual master, and he comes through the books in order to teach us. Why does he take the trouble? Because he's our ever well-wisher. That famous sign-off, that probably if you read any of his letters, he would always sign it, your ever well-wisher. So that no other friend can possibly be always your ever well-wisher. Eventually they, have to do something for themselves and forget about you. So Krishna never forgets about us. He expands as a super soul. He's always with us, and he's concerned, just like a father for a wayward son or wayward child. When will they come back? So that's an important consideration. So you can imagine how peaceful you can be. First of all, you don't have any personal desires. Your only desire is to please Krishna. And so, if you know how to do that, you've been taught by the books and by the guru and the sadhus, then you can always be enjoying that that bhakti rasa. You remember this verse of the Goswamis, this Goswami songs, Goswami Ashtaka, about the 6 Goswamis. So the 4th verse, I think my favorite one, it says, Tyaktva turnam ashesha mandala patisheding sadatuchavat. 3 of those 6 Goswamis were extremely wealthy. They had the opportunity to enjoy unlimited material happiness. Rupa and Sanatan. Sanatan was the prime minister of the king, Nawab Hussain Shah, and Rupa Goswami was the finance minister. So you could very well trusted, trustworthy. But when they met Lord Chaitanya, they famously, I think it was in Ramkeli, and they surrendered. Namo Mahavadanyaya Krishna Prema Vadayate Krishnaya Krishna Chaitanya Namne Gaurajaya Namaha. They uttered that verse. Fold on the butts, you can imagine. Mahavadanyaya, the most munificent, giving the most valuable thing, Krishna Prema, giving it out freely. Therefore, you're the most munificent incarnation there could ever be. And you've appeared now as Chaitanya, but you're actually Krishna. Krishnaya, but in the dress of Lord Chaitanya, we offer our obeisance and surrender to you. So after that, it was just a question of extricating themselves from the service to the Nawab. Rupa Goswami was able to easily, he cashed out, he had a boat full of gold, gave half of it to the Brahmins and devotees, quarter of it to his relatives, and a quarter for emergency. It served to bribe the jailer and let his brother go, and it's the way they both joined Lord Chaitanya. Sanatan joined him in Varanasi, and Rupa Goswami eventually met him, I think, first in Jagannath Puri. So they were free. So tyaktva turnam means giving up immediately. This word turna means don't wait around, don't waste a second. Immediately act on what you know is right, because the Maya is so strong it can cover you. So immediately they talked about turnam, ashesha mandalapati means endless influence and wealth that they had. Gave it up as tuchabat, insignificant, like it was nothing. $1 billion, like it was nothing. You can imagine. Tuchabat budva dina ganeshiko, and they became mendicants for the sake of helping the dinas. We're the dinas. We're the poor, wretched souls without Krishna consciousness. So in order to help the conditioned souls, they gave it all up, and they followed Lord Chaitanya. They wrote so many things and excavated the places of pilgrimage and pastimes, Leela stands in Vrindavan. And when the wealthy donors would come along, they would say, yes, build a temple. And this way they built temples, even though they were living in the most austere. Budva dina ganeshiko kodunaya, out of their compassion, kopina kantashrito, taking shelter of rejected cloth, and they lived as austerely as possible. They didn't have a home. They would live under a tree, in the trees, but they wouldn't make their home under one tree. This is my tree. No, they would live under a different tree every night, so they wouldn't get attached to a specific tree. And begged madhukari, whatever they could get here and there. And hardly slept. So even eating, sleeping, they weren't even, they're minimizing that. So from extremely wealthy, 100 millionaires, billionaires, they came down to nothing materially. So Prabhupada tells a story about a man he knew during the war. He was in India during World War II in Calcutta. The bombing came down from the Japanese, or I think it was the Japanese bomb in Calcutta. Prabhupada was there. So he went through that. And as he explained, some people become very wealthy during a war. They're able to corner a market, whatever. And some people go broke. So he knew a very wealthy man who lost all his money. And he couldn't live. He was used to so many comforts and things, and now he had to beg for this. He couldn't live. He committed suicide. So materially, it's horrific to suddenly be bereft of everything. But this was freedom. This is liberation. I won't tell the story how Sanatan Goswami, when he took sannyas, he's walking, and his aide had 8 pieces of gold just as an emergency. You might need it. But when Sanatan found it, he said, "Why do you keep this death knell with you for us? You know, someone will kill us for it." They almost did. Anyway, there's a whole story. So finally, when he sent his servant back, you take the remaining gold and you go home. He felt free. You know, now I have nothing. You know. So it's liberating. Only if you have Krishna. Otherwise, it's terrifying to have nothing. You know, you see these homeless people. They're also homeless. They're also living on the street, but they're not in ecstasy. Because the third line of the verse says, Gopi bhavada samratabdala hari kallola magno moha. Again and again, they're diving into the ocean of Gopi bhava, you know, love for Krishna and the mood of the gopis, the highest level of bhakti rasa. So they're experiencing the highest happiness. They were the most wealthy, much more wealthy than when they had piles of gold. This is the great treasure of love. Prema Dhana, it's called. So, I don't know how I got off onto that, but oh yeah, because who can really be peaceful? He's talking about peaceful, right? Nasti buddhi yukta. If your intelligence is not linked to Krishna and Krishna consciousness, then you can't be peaceful, because the mind will not be satisfied unless you know, if it's not linked to Krishna, it's got to be linked to Maya. And Maya is sada samudvigna diyam. The materialistic mind is always disturbed. You know, there may be certain moments when you feel you've gained something and you're satisfied, but it's temporary, because everything in the material world is temporary. You have to leave it. You have to come down from the drug. You have to, you know, finish your liaison with your girlfriend, whatever it is, and then you're back to unsatisfied mind, looking for this, worrying about this. You know. There cannot be any peace without linking the Krishna. How can there be peace without linking the intelligence linked to Krishna? And without peace, how can there be any happiness? And then he warns in the next verse, which we'll read. Okay, and how can there be happiness without peace? That's right here. Okay. So this peace, you know, this Brahma Bhuta Prasanatma Nashochati Nakangshati Samaksavitabushit Madbhaktim Labhatepadam in 18th chapter. This Brahma Bhuta platform, this is the platform of peacefulness and prasanatma and joy, innate. Because we're as spirit souls, that's where we belong, at Krishna's lotus feet. That's our natural position. What is that verse? Somebody can chant it with me. Jivera Swarupoi Krishnera Nityadas. The Lord, Sanatana Goswami asked, who am I? Who am I? Well, we learned, who are you, Saul? Are you the body? Go to the back of the class. You're never the body. You may think you are. You're a spirit soul, right? So Lord Chaitanya, Jivera Swarupoi Krishnera Nityadas, one line. The living entity is an eternal servant of Krishna. You know? So that means if we're not acting that way, we're in an unnatural position. We're not in our real position, and we can never be happy in a false position. That's a fact. You know? Hare Krishna. So to be really peaceful, we have to be living in that position. We have to at every moment we have to act that we're actually the eternal servants of Krishna, using this vehicle of the body, which has been our prison house for many millions of years, different varieties of it. But it can become our agent for serving Krishna. Now here's a verse you'll never hear anyone else quote in the class. From chapter 87. I don't know if you know it. Chodanupatam Kolayam. This is a great verse. And Gopi Pranadana Prabhu's commentary is brilliant. Chodanupatam Kolayam in the Matmasorit Priyavat. Chadatittaton Maketu Hite Priya Atmanicha. Nabadadamandaho Sadapasanayatmahano Yadunshaya Brahme Urubahi Kushadir Batak. Now listen to the meaning in this verse, very instructive. So one of the personified Vedas is praying to Garbhodakshay Vishnu. And he says, my dear Lord, that the human form of life is perfectly suited to serving you. You know, Atmasarit Priyavat. And if one actually engages the body in serving you, then that body becomes his best friend, an intimate associate. In other words, it's like paraphernalia. Just like these you know, we have so many wonderful things in the back there to worship the Lord. So those are sacred items, you know. We carefully wash them and store them and use them for serving Krishna. So your hand is not any different than other things. your eyes, your ears, all the body that you have is really just a wonderful machine that, if used properly in helping you connect to Krishna, is wonderful. And from the inside, from within, Krishna is guiding you how to serve him, and everything is fine. But alas, he says, the third line, Nabadadamantaho, those who do not take their pleasure in serving you, then they have to be, we read that, serving Kama and Krodha and the illusion. That's painful. So, Nabadadamantaho, what do they worship? Asat, Asatupasaniya. They worship mammon in the Bible, okay? Asat, you're worshiping the material energy, meaning you're focusing your mind on it, you're seeing how you can arrange for it to give you pleasure, you're completely absorbed. That's the asatupasana, and this is atmahano, a virtual suicide for the soul. And what's the result then? Yadanusha brahme. You keep wandering through different bodies, different universes. Urubaye kushadeta batak. Now you're getting kushadeta. You're not getting a human form of life, certainly not a human form of life in which you have the good fortune of meeting devotees. And all of these other forms of life, subhuman and demonic, they cause great fear. Urubaye kushadeta batak. So this is our choice in the human form of life. Use this body and this mind, every facility we have, for helping to help the soul connect with Krishna. In other words, for helping us be Krishna conscious, and that's the ideal use of this human form. And all of us here are making an effort to do that from one degree or another. And that that's where you really find peace and sustaining happiness. It's not material because it's based on the soul connecting with Krishna. And as long as you're connected to Krishna in that service attitude, you're feeling that bhakti ras. This is the reservoir of pleasure. It never runs out. Whereas material pleasure is very flickering and it always runs out. It's based on every condition has to be right. But in Krishna consciousness, we all have what we need. We have our ears, we have our eyes, our brain is in good shape, hopefully. In other words, we've been blessed, not just with the human form, but with the human form that we've come in contact with Krishna consciousness. So we have to use the time that's with us. We don't know how much time is left. We don't know how much time is left in its bodies. I would say don't read the news, because it's like so depressing. But it's the news is birth, old age, disease, and death. That's always the news, one variety or another. So we know it's coming. We know that but now, we have our wits about us. We can hear. We can chant. Don't waste time. So that, because the next verse, Krishna says what may happen. It's a dangerous situation. All right, let's do one more. Indriyanam ichadatam yanmanon hubadiyate tadasya harati pragyam vayurnavamivambasi. As a strong wind sweeps away a boat on the water, even one of the roaming senses on which the mind focuses can carry away a man's intelligence. Purport: unless all of the senses are engaged in the service of the Lord, even one of them engaged in sense gratification, can deviate the devotee from the path of transcendental advancement. As mentioned in the life of Maharaj Ambarish, all of the senses must be engaged in Krishna consciousness, for that is the correct technique for controlling the mind. And Krishna consciousness gives you an opportunity to engage all the senses. Even the sex desire can be engaged properly in household life. But it requires vigilance, because Maya is always there to trick you, And even you find in the third canto, Kapila Dev talks about devotional service in the modes of passion, devotional service in the mode of ignorance, right? In other words, if you approach Krishna and you say, that Saul, he insulted me. Give me the strength to fight him and beat him. And in the mode of ignorance, I approach Krishna. I'm chanting Hare Krishna, but my desire is to, do something violent. In other words, mode of ignorance. It's in the service of the lower self. So we're taught, not just to approach Krishna, but how and what to pray for. The Hare Krishna mantra is a prayer to Krishna and Radha. Please engage me in your service. Not for anything else. Even Dhruva Maharaj, he was angry. He'd been insulted by his stepmother, and being a Kshatriya, he took umbrage. 5 years old, went to his real mother. Says, Mom, I wasn't able to sit on Dad's lap. Why is that? So she said, well, your father loves, one was called, what was it called? Suruchi and Suniti, right? The names are all important. Sometimes I think they're all nicknames, How you are, We'll come up with a nickname for you, so don't worry. But Suruchi means very, very beautiful, very attractive. Suniti means very virtuous, right? Very moral. So his mother was very virtuous, and I can't help you, but God can help you. And Prabhupada adds this commentary. I haven't seen it in the book. So Dhruva said, where is God? How can I find him? Well, I've heard, says his mother, that the sages find him in the forest. So that's where you go. So he goes to the forest, And Narada Muni comes and intervenes. And he tests him. Look, I'll teach you yoga, and everything, but you're too young now, so go back home. So, oh great sage, I offer my obeisance, but I'm not going back home. My mother told me I can find God in the forest, and I'm going to find out, So if you can help me, all right. So so Narada Muni gives him a means of meditation. It's Satya Yuga after all. And that involves deity worship. He's going to be sitting, it's in Vrindavan, he's going to be sitting on the bank of a river somewhere. So how's he going to do deity worship? There's an authorized way. From the mud on the bank, you can make a deity and worship, and then every day you can dissolve again, make a new one the next day. So he's doing rudimentary deity worship. He's meditating on Krishna in the heart, and he's chanting. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. That's the holy name. So he's chanting the holy name, meditating. Meanwhile, he's performing severe austerities, slowing down his respiration, slowing. And he had entrained the universal respiration. So as he was slowing his breathing, the demigods were choking up. And they were appealed to the Lord, please help out, go down. And so the Lord appears before him after 6 months only of this process, meditating on the Lord in the heart, chanting Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya, deity worship. So it's bhakti. And when Vishnu appears on Garuda in front of him, it's described that he was in such ecstasy. It looked like all of his senses were devouring him. He was licking him with his tongue and devouring with it. It's described like that sometime. So then naturally he's going to offer prayers, and there's some prayers in the Bhagavatam. My favorite is Bhakti Moho Bhavahatam Tvahime Pasango Bhuyadananda Mahatam Amalashayanam. I forget the saying. The last line is Neshe Bhavadguna Katamandapana Matta. He's saying that my desire is that I'll always have the association of your pure devotees, who are always coming forth with the river of nectar, glorification of you. So therefore, by associating with, I'll hear that nectar, and I'll easily cross over the ocean of birth and death. He purposely put it far away. Just kidding. So that's a wonderful prayer. I wish I could remember it. I haven't chanted in a while. But the most famous one, Prabhupada chants all the time. Sthanabhilashi tapatistitoham pram twaptavan deva munindra guyam kacham bachindvanabhidivyaratnam svaman katatosmi vadangdayache. Prabhupada often just quote the last line there. So Sthanabhilashi, I was desiring a position, namely the kingdom of my father. And therefore I was situated in tapasya. But now I've gotten you, Tvam Praptavan, Devam and Indraguyam, who are even hidden away from the great devas and the munis. They can't see you, but now I'm seeing you. So now I realize that the kingdom I wanted was no more valuable than broken glass, because I've gotten this incredible jewel of your darshan, the Divya Ratnam, divine jewel. And therefore the punchline is, the key is, Svaman Kratartos Mivadanglayashi. My dear Lord, I don't want anything else. I don't desire anything else. Just your darshan, your service. So this is a perfect example of how material desire, yet it impelled him to find the Lord, was purified until he only desired to serve the Lord. But because he wanted that kingdom, therefore he had to be the king for 32,000 years. And eventually, the Vishnu-dutas came and took him. And death came, and he put his foot on the head of death and got onto the Vaikuntha airplane and went. And then he was, oh, my mother, what about my mother? He said, don't worry. And they look behind, there's another Vaikuntha airplane, he's taking it. But the stepmother, we don't know about her. Anyway, it's a wonderful story, but it illustrates a central principle, that somehow or other, if you approach Krishna, you'll be purified. Prabhupada recorded, Yena Kena Pakareta Mana Krishna Niveshya, somewhere or other, focus on Krishna. Even Kamsa, Putana, the demons, they focused on Krishna, though they benefited. But we want to focus on Krishna in a favorable way. And that's real bhakti. And we'll be... So, even one of the senses, we have to be careful that all the senses have to be engaged in Krishna's service, and we have principles to engage all the senses. All right, one more. 68, Tasmad. Okay, we come to a therefore verse, so that's the conclusion. Tasmad yasya mahabaho niguhitani sarvashaha indriyanindriyartebhyas tasya pragya patishtita. Therefore, Almighty Armed One whose senses are restrained from their objects is certainly of steady intelligence. Purport. One can curb the forces of sense gratification only by means of Krishna consciousness, or engaging all the senses in the transcendental loving service of the Lord. As enemies are curbed by superior force, the senses can similarly be curbed, not by any human endeavor, but only by keeping them engaged in the service of the Lord. One who has understood this, that only by Krishna consciousness is one really established in intelligence, and that one should practice this art under the guidance of a bona fide spiritual master, is called a sadhaka, or a suitable candidate for liberation. Okay, so we're coming to the end of this chapter. We'll finish it this week for sure. Any final comments here? Oh, we have actually a little time left. Okay. Oh, yes, please.
Same words were also there in 61, where Krishna says about first time Matpara, right?
Yes, that's good. Yes, right. Matpara. Very good. Notice. Yeah, this theme, the whole idea is how to fix our consciousness. How can we really become fixed in Krishna consciousness? And this, this is the summary of the whole book. So the Bhagavad Gita is a summary in and of itself. It's like the preliminary. It's an introduction really for the Bhagavatam, right? But all the principles are there, and the second chapter is a summary for the whole text. So we're learning some very important principles here in the second chapter. Thank you for pointing that out. So we want to be suitable candidates. We want to be serious sadhakas. Okay. So. Okay. So we'll do one more, real quick one. Ya nisha sabhabhutanam tasyam jagarti sangyami yasyam jagrati bhutani sa nisha pashyato manehi. What is night for all beings is the time of awakening for the self-controlled. And the time of awakening for all beings is night for the introspective sage. There are two classes of intelligent men. One is intelligent in material activities for sense gratification, and the other is introspective and awake to the cultivation of self-realization. Activities of the introspective sage, or thoughtful man, are night for persons materially absorbed. Materialistic persons remain asleep in such a night due to their ignorance of self-realization. The introspective sage remains alert in the night of the materialistic men. The sage feels transcendental pleasure in the gradual advancement of spiritual culture, whereas the man in materialistic activities, being asleep to self-realization, dreams of varieties of sense pleasure, feeling sometimes happy and sometimes distressed in his sleeping condition. The introspective man is always indifferent to materialistic happiness and distress. He goes on with his self-realization activities undisturbed by material reactions. And just a note, we had a wonderful program. Was it last night? Or the night before? It was Saturday night. Saturday night. You were there with the poetry? So Hari Parshad Prabhu gave a talk, and he started out, well, we all have to become drunkards. How was that? That sounds... And I was immediately thinking of the third verse of the Bhagavatam. Pabata Bhagavatam Rasamaliyam. You have to drink the Bhagavatam, O wise man. And then that verse I asked you to memorize, you probably still haven't memorized yet. Pabanti he bhagavata atmanaksatam. The drinking. Pabanti means to drink. Pabanti he bhagavata atmanaksatam katamatam shavanaputesha sambitam. Pananti te vishahibadushatasayam vajanti tachadanasadoruhantikam. Those who drink Krishna Kata, Katamrita, the nectar of Krishna Kata, Pabanti he bhagavata atmanaksatam. Those who are very dear to the Lord and for whom the Lord is very dear, Katamrita, shavana, drink through the ear holes, and who are fully satisfied with that drink, some of them, then punanti te, they purify vishaya. Vishaya, remember we had vishaya vinivartante. They purify the polluted aim of life known as sense gratification, and go back to Godhead, back to a place close by the lotus feet of the Lord. The last verse of the second chapter of the second canto, if you're interested. I forget the number, 37, I think, something like that. Very nice. So that drinking, if you're into drinking alcohol, you can only drink so much, and you know the buzz you get eventually turns into a hara. You know, it's just perverted reflection. But drinking the nectar of Krishna consciousness you're never satiated. That comes up again and again in the Bhagavatam. You're never really satiated. Lord Chaitanya would stay up all night with Ramananda Roy and Srup Damodar, you know, drinking the different verses of the Krishna Karnamrita. I'll give you a sample of one of the verse. Mama chetasis padata vallavi vibhor maninu pada apanahimanju sinjitam. Now listen to the ornaments now, the alliteration. Kamalava nechala kalinda kanika kalahanta kanta kalakujatadvitam. Can you hear that? The K's. That's alliteration, called anupras, is an ornament. So what's the prayer? May my mind, may the tinkling ankle bells of Krishna as he walks into the forest of Vrindavan be manifest in my mind. May I hear that transcendental sound. The swans in Kamala's little private lake within the Yamuna there are according that tinkling of the ankle bells a warm welcome with these songs emanating from their throats. The kalahangsa. Kalahangsa means the hangsas or swans that sing very beautifully. Kalahangsa kanta from their throats. Kalakujatadritam. Kala is a very sweet warbling sound. So this is how you enjoy. You know, expressions of Krishna's beauty, pastimes, the holy name. There gives an eternal festival for the mind. It's described like that at the end of the Bhagavatam. So where's there any unhappiness? You're living in the material world, but if you're with devotees, you can share these things. You see, but material sense gratification is very flickering, and it leaves you angry and frustrated, and it's degrading. But this kind of pleasure is uplifting and joyous. And that if you refine your senses by the practice of devotional service, you can taste that. And so that's available to us, and that's where we should take our pleasure. And then the allurements of the sense gratification won't bother you. And when negative things happen, won't bother you. You'll be able to float along in Krishna rasa. Okay, all glories to Srila Prabhupada. Hari Hari Bol.